Hello, welcome to Four Horsemen's Comics and Gaming Deck Tech for today. I have Nick Hetrick here. We're going to discuss his deck, winning 2-0 for today, Mono Red Vampires for Standard. Now, I understand that you are kind of a rogue deck builder and that you have a kind of interesting idea on how to approach deck building. Would you describe how you came across this deck and how it works for us?
Well, with this deck, it kind of reminded me of back in the day, old extended. I used to play a lot of Blue Green Madness,
Mm-hmm.
and I was instantly drawn to the Madness mechanic whenever they reprinted it in Shadows over Innistrad.
Mm-hmm.
And this deck plays a lot like that. It's more of a tempo deck. It looks like an aggro deck on the surface, but I play a tempo game. So, I'm trying to make the game go long in some cases. I can go fast, but uh, I want to get card advantage, play a lot of removal.
Excellent. Now this is something that's new to red as in general. Most people see red, think aggro, right?
Right.
First thing that stood out to me when we were laying this deck out on the table is you have quite a lot of lands, and of course, because you're playing tempo, that means you're going to be a little bit more cost heavy than a typical aggro deck, and so more lands is natural.
Yeah.
What cards do you say stand out here? Now we mentioned before we started the interview here that your main card in the deck is Avacyn's Judgment.
That's a good card in the deck. It's a good card in the format right now. And
Hmm.
the thing about it is, not a lot of people have read that card outside of draft. It's not something that's played in the format, but in my deck, with the synergies that are present, it's a great card. So, I've won a lot of games on the back of Avacyn's Judgment.
Okay, so what synergies are you referring to? What does Averson's Judgment do in interaction with your other cards that you have here?
Well, I have Insolent Neonate, which can enable Madness.
Hmm.
He can get through early for a little bit of damage. And then whenever they go to remove him, they get tired of getting hit for one. I'll often, uh, I'll often, discard it, Avacyn's Judgment, clear their board, or deal a bunch of damage. Um, and the Ravenous Bloodseeker does kind of the same thing. He can stand up to most of the humans that are played in the blue white and the human decks. Um, so because he's a 3-1 to start, and he can hold the ground until I can, get an Avacyn's Judgment and just clear him off. So
So do you think that the Ravenous Bloodseeker that the discard effect works out quite well with the +2 -2? It's a good trade-off. Now you have Lightning Axe as well, and I assume that that would be a target for that Madness effect because then you would get some a little bit of extra damage in on that same turn.
Lightning Axe is really good here because I have Avacyn's Judgment, I have Incorrigible Utes, um, and I get a lot of 2-for-1s with Lightning Axe whenever I, basically proc it off with like Fiery Temper. I can get a big creature and a small creature, things like that.
Okay, so one of the big things that comes to mind when looking at this deck and across the board construction, that it seems that it may be subject to a little bit of disruption when it comes to Avacyn's Judgment and counterspelling, right? As well as anything that hits on creature removal. How do you resolve that with your sideboard? What do you bring in to stop those kind of decks from disrupting your game?
Well, I really, if they're playing a lot of creature removal, then I have like Exquisite Firecraft in the board. Um, the decks that play the creature removal, a lot of creature removal, are often susceptible to things like Act of Treason, so I can fight back by taking one of their guys for a turn.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not really worried if they remove my guys because my guys aren't that great on their own. They're really it's a synergistic deck. So
Hmm.
what I'll do is, I'll attack in, and whenever they go to remove something, D&D's going on in the background.
They're killing us. Well,
So what I'll do is I'll attack in until they get tired of getting hit with that creature, like a Ravenous Bloodseeker, and then, oops, I have Incorrigible Youths.
okay, well
Um,
that seems like it's a well put together concept that you have here. Now, act of treason, it takes control of an opponent's creature until end of turn, correct? End of
yeah,
turn, yes. All right. So with that, it kind of adds a little bit of pillow because most people are unlikely or to want to do a board wiper with one of their creatures on
Yeah,
your side of the
because
board.
in the last round, the guy had it was a red green ramp, a good matchup for me,
Hmm.
and he was playing the the usual suspects of like Chandra and World Breaker, and Act of Treason was great. I was able to finish a game by taking his World Breaker for a turn and coming in with a Gold Knight Castigator on the same turn. So it was pretty incredible. It was a lot of damage. So
Excellent. And which match was that? Was that your first or your second match?
that was the second match.
What happened when when in your first matchup? What did you encounter there, and how did you resolve that match?
That also, I've had two good matchups today. The other one, the first matchup was a red green goggles deck with
Hmm.
Pyromancer's goggles,
Of course.
and he he was playing pretty much the same game plan, ramp up, get the goggles down and start burning me out. In game two, he won game one, and then in game two, I Act of Treason, took a World Breaker, got there. In game three, he hadn't played goggles until game two, like right at the end. So in game three, I brought in the two Smash the Smithereens, and they worked out just fine. I was able to kill the goggles and then untap with an incorrigible use off of Ravenous Bloodseeker and get in for lethal.
All right, excellent. Well, I thank you very much for taking the time with
Hey,
talking
thanks a
to us
lot.
today. And right after this, we'll have some more magic.